And now we are live everywhere. So, everybody, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're doing another live recording of the podcast. We're going to give it a minute before we get into it. Just getting my wallet out of my pocket. There we go. And today we're going to be talking about the biggest mistakes that athletes consistently make in their journey. Before we get into it, if anybody has any guesses, drop a comment and let me know what you think the biggest mistake is that athletes make on their journey. But I'm going to give it about another minute to let a few people tune in and do the show live with us here. So as you tune in, it's about almost 1:45 here in Calgary, Alberta. I'd love to know for you where you're at, where you're from, and how your day's going, what you've been up to today, anything that you're excited about that you have coming up. And in about 30 seconds, we're going to get going on the show. BWC, Adam Glitter, I'm not too sure what you're asking here. If you want to clarify that, I would love to see if I can help. But we're going to be getting into the podcast. For those who don't know, I think I'm good. But for those who don't know, the show that I run here is a show based on athlete development. The whole goal of the show is to help athletes reach higher levels in their careers in sport. It is to help athletes learn things outside of the sport that are going to help them succeed at the highest levels they can. And who we're aiming to speak to on the show, we're aiming to speak to athletes, we're aiming to speak to coaches, we're aiming to speak to anybody involved in that journey. So if you've tuned into the show before, I appreciate you. If it is your first time here, welcome. And we're going to be getting into the show here in 3, 2, 1. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Elite Development Podcast, the show designed to help athletes gain an edge on their opponents and build their dream careers in sport. I'm your host, Kenny Dusseault, and today we are going to be talking about the biggest mistake that athletes make in their careers. And one of the reasons that I wanted to bring this topic to you all today is because this is something that I see all the time. And I know I start a lot of my episodes like that. But I see athletes do this constantly, and it drives me nuts because personally, I'm a big believer in controlling what I can control. You know, everybody loves to watch the news and see all the terrible things that are going on in the world and, freak out about what's happening here, what's happening there. And yeah, I understand that there are bad things going on in the world, but if I can't have an effect on it, if I can't control it, I find that spending my time sitting around and worrying about it is doing no good for anybody. So I either continue to focus on myself or I try to figure out what I can do to actually help the problem. And if I can't help the problem, I move on from it because I understand that bad things happen. But if I can't do something about it, why am I going to spend my time being upset about it instead of living the best life that I can live and trying to help people through the work that I do? And this, just going on a little bit of a tangent there, but this brings me to the point of the episode today, which is the biggest mistake that athletes make repeatedly on their journeys is putting a time frame on their success. So if you're a young athlete listening to this, let me know if this resonates. You're sitting at home, you're watching your sport on TV, and you see someone on TV competing in your sport that's younger than you. Or you see someone competing on TV in your sport that is right around your age, maybe only a year or two older, and immediately you go into anxiety. Immediately you go into those questions. Why are they that much further ahead than me? What do they have that I don't have? If they're so much further ahead than me, then am I doing well enough? If they're so much further ahead than me, do I even have what it takes? If they're so far and I'm not there yet, well, why am I even doing this? I should just quit now. Let me know if that resonates. If you're watching TV and you're watching your sport and you see somebody that is your age, somebody that is right around your age, somebody that's younger than you, competing at much higher levels than you immediately freak yourself out and think, why am I even doing this? Because if they're so far and they're younger than me, then that means that I don't have what it takes, or that means that I'm not going to make it. And when you have those feelings, I know when I was a kid, I had those feelings. I know even competing as a power lifter, even when I was doing well, I would watch guys that were at higher levels than me. And I'd spend so much time being upset that they were stronger than I was, or that they were lifting more than I was, only to realize that most of them were on steroids anyway, and I wasn't. But beyond that point, spending all my time watching videos of these guys lift these ungodly amounts of weight helped me in no way, shape, or form. Because now not only was I upset that they were stronger than I was, but I just wasted 2 to 3 hours of my life staring at them instead of focusing on my own journey and focusing on actually getting stronger and putting myself in the position to do what they were doing one day. So if you are in a position right now where you are not at the top level, if you're in a position right now where you're watching people that are further along than you in that same journey and it's freaking you out, I have a couple of things that I want you to understand. The first is that, like somebody just so elegantly put in the comments on the TikTok live, comparison is a killer. Yes, this person might be younger than you and they might be further along the journey. They might be competing at higher levels. They might be making more money, but you don't know their story. You don't know what lucky break they might have gotten that, helped them take that next step, and yours might be right around the corner. Maybe it wasn't lucky, and maybe they've just been doing this since they were 4 years old. You don't know their story. You don't understand where they come from. And as a result of not understanding where they come from, you spending time focusing on why you're not as far as they are is not helping you in any way, shape, or form. So that's number one. Comparison is a killer. And number two is that if you can't control it, you need to forget it. Because if you can never control how good someone else is, or how far someone else has gotten, or whatever breaks someone else has gotten. All you can control is your own approach. So it's easy to sit and say, well, they got a lucky break here, or, yeah, if I had grown up in that area, I'd be further along too, or yeah, I would be further, but I don't have this or I don't have that. And you know what? You might be right. Like, you might be in an area that your sport isn't as big, and you might be watching people who grew up in an area where your sport is huge. And if that's the case, you might be right, but it doesn't change the fact that it still helps no one. You spending time focusing on what someone else has that you don't have helps nobody. So you need to quit it. And if you're spending your time focusing on what someone else has that you don't have, you're going to drive yourself crazy. You're going to put yourself in a position where all your time is focused on them. And if all your time is focused on them, your time's not focused on what you can actually do to put yourself in a better position. So a lot of the time, and I know this happened to me, when I would start comparing to these higher level athletes, and I would start comparing to these people that I knew I wanted to be like, and that I knew I wanted to, reach the same levels as further in my career, I would spend all my time worrying about how much further they were than I was. And then I would get off track. I would miss the gym that day because I was so anxious and upset that I wasn't further along as an athlete. Or, I would go to the gym, but the workout wasn't as good because I was not feeling great. And as a result, every time you miss the mark, every time that you get off track because you're focused on someone else, guess what? They're not getting off track focusing on you. And if you're getting off track focusing on them, they're not getting off track focusing on you. Who's getting further along? Who's winning? They are. So you see why this is such a vicious circle. If you spend your time comparing to where other people are at, not only can you not do anything about that anyway, not only do your excuses not mean shit, but while you're spending your time comparing to them, they're spending their time training, or they're spending their time recovering, or they're spending their time practicing, and they're getting further and further and further ahead of you. So when we get off track, we're doing ourselves a massive disservice towards our athletic future. So, what I want to go over today is what I want to really reinforce with you when you start having those feelings of anxiety, when you start putting yourself in someone else's shoes, when you start seeing that you're not as far along as you want to be, you start seeing that there are people that are younger than you that are further along, you start questioning whether or not you have what it takes to actually compete at the top level. This is what I really want you guys to remember. This is what I really want you guys to focus on, is that the only thing that matters is that you are improving on a consistent basis. The only thing that matters is that you are improving on a consistent basis. Because if you are improving on a consistent basis, now you're putting yourself in a position to succeed. If you are getting better each and every day, you're going to put yourself in a better position to succeed. And not only that, but stop putting a timeline on the success. Yes, there are going to be hockey players out there that get drafted into the NHL at 18 years old and then play in the NHL by 19 or 20 and then have 20-year careers. But if you're a hockey player out there trying to make it to the NHL and you don't get drafted at 18, your career is not over. You can sign in a lower level league, play well there for a few years and get called up and get a career and still have a career in the NHL. The same thing. I do a lot of work with combat sports athletes. And if you don't get signed to the UFC immediately, or just the fact that there are younger guys in the UFC than you are, doesn't mean that you won't make it. Would it be great if everybody could make it at 22 years old and have these long careers and make shit tons of money and all of that? Of course, like everybody wants that ideal career. But then you've got to ask yourself, what do I want more? A career in the UFC or a career in the UFC right now? Because if that doesn't happen and you decide, well, I didn't get the career I wanted immediately, so I'm going to quit. Well, you never know. You're not going to know what you could have been. You're not going to know what you could have been. And if you don't actually give it everything you've got, if you don't actually try to put yourself in the position to succeed, in the position to get there, now you're going to live the rest of your life wondering, what could I have been? Who could I have been? What if I had just tried a little harder? What if I had just trained a little more? And that's the absolute worst feeling. And so my challenge for you is that when you undoubtedly have those feelings of anxiety, when you're comparing yourself to someone who's further along the journey, when you're comparing yourself to someone who's younger than you are, that is competing at the level you want to be, that you're not at yet, when you start having those feelings of anxiety, I want you to come back to the fact that you cannot put a timeline on your success. I want you to come back to the fact that you do not want to live the rest of your life regretting not going all in on this athletic career. You don't want to live the rest of your life regretting the choices that you made by spending all your time focused on someone else instead of spending all your time on yourself. And then as soon as you have that thought, as soon as you understand where they're at doesn't matter, now I want you to refocus. Because yes, if you have big goals for your career, you need to be consistently improving. You need to be getting better every day. And if you're not getting better every day, something in your training needs to change. That might be your strength and conditioning work. That might be your skills practices. That might be your recovery, your nutrition. There are so many different areas, but something in your training, something in your preparation needs to change. So I want you to ask yourself, when you refocus, what can I improve about how I'm preparing right now? What can I improve about how I'm preparing right now? Because if you ask yourself that question every single day, what can get better? What can improve? What's my next step? Now, you're not only going to put yourself in a position where you're improving every day, but you're going to put yourself in a position, where you're improving as much as you can every day. Because that is the next step of all this. Instead of spending your time focused on other people, instead of spending your time focused on other athletes, the number one thing that you need to spend your time focusing on if you want to succeed in your athletic career long term is how I can make the most improvement possible in one day. And that is your focus every single day. Now, I've got to wrap it up in a minute here, but I just wanted to reinforce as well that when I say, how can I make the most improvement in one day? This does not mean spend your whole day in the gym. This does not mean wake up in the morning, train all day long, and then go to sleep at night. Because we've been over this in about 100 podcast episodes in the past. The person who trains the most is not the one who is the most successful. The person who is the smartest and trains the hardest is the one who is the most successful. So I want to reinforce that your goal is to stop focusing on where other people are at, because you cannot control that no matter how much you might want to. And I want you to start focusing on yourself. Start focusing on that one question. How do I make the most improvement possible from today moving into tomorrow? And then when you wake up tomorrow, ask yourself, how do I make the most improvement possible from today into tomorrow? So that is it. That is all. I got to run off pretty quickly today, but I hope you all took away some value from this. I hope you all took away a little bit of a change in mentality that you can bring into your own careers. If you did, I would love it if you would first share this episode when you hear it. I would love it if you would share this episode with a friend, with a teammate, with a coach, anyone who can gain some value from it as well. And finally, I would love it if you would drop me a comment on social media. All the ways that you can do that are going to be linked in the show notes below. You can find me on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram, and you can find those names. You can find the tags in the show notes below to be able to reach out directly to me. Let me know what you took away from the episode. This is one of my absolute favorite things to do. I appreciate everyone who took the time to tune in today. It means the world to me. And I will talk to you all again very soon.